Good afternoon. How are you guys doing? Good? Excellent. That's what we really want to hear. As you can imagine, we kept the best for the last. And there is a very good reason for that so that we can keep you all here and give you the whole thing in these 50 minutes, right? Everything that you want to learn about humans and AI, everything you can learn in this next 50 minutes. Because I can say that confidently because we have an amazing set of panelists here who have tremendous experience in the industry, tremendous experience with AI systems, tremendous experience with automation and its impact on the society as well as on the organizations, right? When we are talking about this topic, I mean, like, as you all know, this is a topic that is literally vertically splitting the industry today. I mean, like, there are people like Elon Musk who says that AI is going to not only eat the world, it is going to eat the humanity, right? On the other side, we have Mark Zuckerberg who says that nothing happens, it's just going to create some efficiency and we all will live around. We will all learn to live with the AI systems, and there is nothing going to be much difference than what we have seen in the last 3 industrial revolutions. So, if you look at it, we call this as the 4th industrial revolution. The first 3, starting from steam engines, predominantly has given us tremendous efficiency, right? There has been job losses. There has been tremendous growth in jobs. Every industrial revolution has created more jobs than they have taken away. That is the reality, right? Now, suddenly we are also worried about the 4th industrial revolution, especially with the artificial intelligence coming into play. And what we want to kind of talk about is this a myth or is it real? And if it is real, where are we headed, right? So that's kind of a things that we want to kind of, discuss in this panel. Before I do that, I want the panelists to kind of take maybe few sentences. What do you think, Sanjeev?
Okay, so you referred to the first 3 industrial revolutions. So in each of these, I'm sure there was a sense of excitement, anticipation, and also apprehension, quite like we have with this 4th revolution that we're talking about. What makes this one slightly different? I mean, of course, there's going to be job losses like they have been in the past, and jobs will also get created like they have in the past. What's probably different about this one is that we managed to scare ourselves, perhaps rightfully so, about the relevance of humans at an extreme. If you look at the Musk view, which I personally don't subscribe to, but whether humans would even be relevant and would machines overtake humans. And that is something, that's probably something different about this. No longer just about job losses, it's about who's going to win this war.
Okay.
That's an interesting topic.
Okay, we'll talk more about it. Rajesh, what's your view?
I agree with you, Sanjeev, and I personally believe that the 4th industrial revolution will be very different to the 3 that actually preceded it. And for the very simple reason that it sort of challenges and redefines the very idea of what it means to be human. And there are 2 aspects to this. One is the aspect of what it promises. The other is, does it come with its own peril? And what do we do as well? In terms of promise, the advent of technologies which includes AI, which includes automation technologies, which includes IoT, some point in time will start improving the quality of life and leads to certain new economy aspects as well. Once you start getting connected systems, you have smart technologies that are implemented, you have a far more intelligent machine to a human kind of a conversation. It will lead to certain business opportunities that doesn't today exist, and that probably translates to a new economy as well. And for this simple reason, and for the reason that any of these changes come with a certain scale, which is unprecedented, at a certain velocity, and the kind of scope, which is unprecedented, something that we've not seen before, it's going to cut through various disciplines, functions, industries, as well as economies. And that's why I personally feel, Vamsee, that this is not about an extension of a 3rd industrial revolution of computerization, but a new era in itself, right? In terms of perils, of course, there are certain perils that will bring in, and probably elements of economic equality, inequality, etc. And that's something that we will have to address. Governments will have to step in to define their own plans. Elements of business planning needs to kick in, economic planning as well as leadership planning. So, that would probably be my submission.
Great, thanks, Rajesh. Alok, what's your view?
I just did an experiment, 5 minutes litmus test this morning. I went into Times of India newspaper. 7 arbitrary papers I picked up.
Okay.
And I picked 4 things. And the interesting thing is I saw that the cricket match just happened, and in the games, this time it's automated umpire. So we started with all this video, Hawkeye in 2008, I remember.
Yeah.
It started like that how do you aid with the visual to the 3rd umpire, then you become the 3rd umpire, then you become the 2nd umpire, and you help the umpire, and now you be the umpire.
Yeah.
So that's how the jobs would be. It's complementing to replacement. So that's a reality for certain jobs. And then I picked up another one. It talks about, AI help in predict cyclones.
Uh-huh.
That has a tremendous utility value. The clouds, where it is, and can you predict it, tornadoes coming? That is the utility value. So
Sure.
why we need AI when we have a replacement, that speaks about it.
Okay.
And then I picked two others that talks about jobs and expertise. And I see data science playing a role in a big way. And it talks about how it says AI and IoT in new devices, and India is at the core of it. So that says
That's
it all.
what we were talking since morning.
That says it all, that there would be job replacement
Sure.
for few, and we can go into details, but there are new jobs. Thank
Perfect.
So we have a
Very well
researcher
said.
among
Very
us.
well said. Yeah, Santanu.
All right, Vamsee. Is the mic audible?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you, Vamsee, for giving me the opportunity. First of all, it's a long way. When I graduated in 1994, specializing in data, the only thing the job guaranteed or the degree guaranteed was a long-term unemployment. It's sort of come in a 25 year, the cycle has changed. So when you talk about the hype and the fear, right? It just reminds me of what happened towards the second industrial revolution. The hype and the fear, right? The Edisons of the world were sort of promoting the electricity, promoting electrification, promoting automation, and so on and so off. But the ones that didn't like it were the cobblers in New York City. The fear was that if you use electricity, the rays are going to make you blind, and therefore you do not make good shoes. So Benjamin and Son, which was one of the famous shoemaker, actually advertised as a good shoemaker who does not use electricity. Right? And Benjamin and Son did not exist for very long after that.
Sure.
Within 20 years, it was gone. So the hype and the fear is every single time it's the same, right? There's one side that says it's good, the other side that says it's really bad.
Sure.
The two things are different, though, from the other industrial revolutions, which is the time scale where things are changing are very short. And I sometimes wonder at what is the time scale in which human can react. Most of the previous industrial revolution took anywhere between sort of 40 years. The last one, if you count internet as industrial revolution, still took about 20, 25 years for the efficiency to kick in fully in the society. This one, the time scale is going to be much shorter. That's
Okay.
number one. Number two, except for the internet, the previous one sort of impacted a limited number of industries, and it sort of had a graduated, it went and impacted one industry, second industry, and so on. Because of the time scale, it took a while to, so the society had a time to adjust. This one is sort of, you can talk about radiologists, they're being impacted. You can talk about taxi drivers, they're being impacted. It's sort of impacting everyone in the society at the same time.
Okay.
So does the society have the capability? For the first time, humans are being questioned. What's the time scale of your reaction, right? And how quickly can you cope when everything? It's sort of like, and I'm not going to put a fear in, it's sort of like an asteroid is hitting the Earth, and you know it's about a year, you sort of may have to readjust your society. Can you do that?
Okay. That's a great point. Prasad, what's your view?
Shantanu put a lot of fear into me now.
Don't worry, I have been there.
Well, in terms of your question about this whole hype and myth versus reality, is there a fear and all this stuff? Fair disclosure, I work for Broadridge, and we've invested so heavily into the AI, ML, and all that. I'm a big fan of that.
Sure.
Now, having said that, the view I take with all of this stuff that's going on, with this fear and, the robos marching on the streets and all that good stuff, right? When I really think about it, what we have accomplished, all the great stuff that we did with all the bots and all the good stuff, I'm a user of all of that, benefited. But if you really look at that, it's like taking a generous portion of old wine from 50 to 70 years ago, the whole, the basics of statistical inferences and conditional probability, and giving it a little bit of a whisk with, thanks to the Moore's law, a generous amount of CPU, which is becoming cheaper, and the storage becoming cheaper, and we put the nice cute terms like ML on that, and we are getting excited, and I'm getting excited, I'm getting value. But the stand I'm really taking on your question in terms of the whole fear and how much will this really challenge humans, etc., I think is really far away. These are associations. I look at this as we're getting an abundant amount of data coming in, handheld devices coming in. So we got a lot of data. We got the power of the CPU and memory. We got the good old statistics supporting us. We put them all together. I think it's a nice product we created. It's great. So if I'm ever worried about the banking being automated, if I'm not worried about banking being automated, I have no reason for this to be creating any problems for the humans.
No, that's good. I mean, like that kind of summarizes the view of various executives that we see in the world as well. I don't think that even the people who take extreme positions kind of take it as a black or white, right? I mean, like there are certain aspects where, as we are all talking about, there is going to be a lot of impact. There are going to be a lot of aspects where it is actually going to increase in our lifestyle, right? So let us first talk about, like everyone touched upon this aspect, right? Which is the big white elephant in the room, which is jobs, right? So I think, Rajesh, you probably are the most connected to the jobs and what is happening there from the automation perspective. So give your perspective on, is this something that is real? And is it something that we should be really, really worried about?
Sure, Vamsee. And cutting through the industry segments, we believe that it's the jobs that will actually reshape as we get into the future. So it's more about reshaping of jobs. Now, what that means is that the jobs will tend to be more engagement oriented than being very repetitive and mundane in life, right? If you look at a typical traditional job design, you would probably have a set of certain standard roles, core roles, fixed roles that probably runs on a very standard job description. You would then probably have certain positions that's more supervisory, some positions which is more managerial, right? In my experience, the moment you start automating some part of the job, what's actually left for the human is to be more interpretive and is to be more service-oriented. Now, what it actually means is the human needs to be highly problem-solving, analytical, far more data-oriented, and working in terms of empathy-related certain frameworks, and hugely collaborative across different functions as well. And this is not a human skill that's available with the jobs that are more traditional in nature. And that's a change that organizations will have to come through in terms of reskilling.
Okay.
In terms of the evolution of jobs, Vamsee, I would probably say two categories of jobs here. One which is more standard jobs, very narrow skill sets. You would probably do your task, which is more repetitive.
Okay.
The other is more, I would say, hybrid tasks, which is where you probably mix some bit of, which is you bring in some elements of technology, some element of operations, a lot of soft skills as well, and which is what is hugely wage paid today, right? With the advent of AI, with the advent of automation, cognitive elements of IoT, etc., there is a need to transition a lot of what used to be traditional jobs and hybrid jobs into what I call as emerging jobs, or what I call as super jobs. And what I mean by super jobs is, as you go forward in the near future, you will start seeing a lot of organizations look at not elements of redefining a job description, but looking at more recoding pieces of work. Can I break this piece of work? Can I recode it? Knowing fully well there is a certain human capability that you would have to use, but closely work with a machine that brings a certain level of intelligence. Then the measure becomes far more outcome-driven. The measure tends to impact various aspects of life, leading to a probable new economy as well. So for me, adoption of these technologies when it comes to job could probably lessen the traditional jobs that you have, but the core job creation happens in hybrid jobs, as well as what I call as super jobs.
Great.
And that's an element of reskilling that somebody would need to do.
Thank you, Rajesh. Sanjeev, I mean, like if you take an example of super jobs, right? I mean, like how do you see those things evolving in the industry, like especially the technology industry?
Okay. So I can't read his mind to say what he had in mind as far as super jobs, but
Sure.
certainly a new class of jobs is going to be created.
Okay.
And he's already spoken about the jobs that are going to go away.
Yeah.
We all recognize that. The blue-collar types are going to go away. There are some jobs that are going to stay and sustain.
Okay.
Anything that requires interpersonal skills, human touch, so psychologists, counselors, managerial roles as well.
Sure.
And I would put data analysts and data scientists in this breed of jobs that are already there, and they're going to stay and they're going to grow.
Okay.
So hopefully that covers everybody in the room. And then there's new set of jobs that are going to be created. So when we're talking about a world where machines are going to be commonplace, you're going to need to have somebody to train those machines. For example, I mean, beyond the traditional training that we talk about, how do you teach a machine how to understand sarcasm?
Okay.
Or empathy, right? Those are the kind of things you were going to need a class of trainers to train the machines.
Sure.
Then there is a class that's going to need to explain why the machine acted a certain way. Because executives in the company or even the general public would demand answers. But once
So do you think that those kind of jobs are never going to be automated?
they're going to
At
be
least for them?
created. Those are the ones that are going to be created in the future.
Created in the
They're going to be trainers. They're going to be people who are going to have to explain why AI acted the way they did. Because once you get into the auditability of all of this,
Sure.
there has to be that. That's sort of how I foresee things.
Okay.
And it's not something that's going to happen a couple of years from now. We're talking about maybe 5, 10 years from now when machines become more pervasive.
Okay.
And then there's going to be the other aspects, which is more about sustaining. How do you make sure that the machines are doing the right thing? Is it free of bias? Is it safe? Is it fair?
Okay.
Is it fair to the society? All those elements would have to come in. So that's a class of jobs that I can see being created. And then I think going back to the point that I said, anything that requires interpersonal touch and having to deal with unpredictability. Because a machine can deal with data that is learned in the past, but unpredictability is something that humans are way better at now.
Excellent.
And that class of jobs, I think, is going to sustain and thrive.
That's a very, that's a great note to wrap up at least on that topic, just because we want to cover so
Can I
many
just
topics. Yes,
jump in a
Alok,
little
yes,
bit?
please.
I think the first point of is it real? I already given examples and what
Yeah.
is being echoed by others. It is real. But where does that hype factor comes in? Because the timeline that we talk about, is it asteroid going to be hitting in a year's time? Or in 20 years' time? Is the water going to be depleted by next year? That's where the issue comes, and
Sure.
the pace matters.
Okay.
Now, going on to the job losses, the straightforward part of the automations, obviously that's happening. This morning, what Milan was talking about in the burger,
Yeah.
that's the patty.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the full burger that can also go away or change. And that's where the second factor, I think they talked about digital worker,
Yeah.
which is a common denominator factor, like the recruitment point that he brought in, is everywhere. So that's a next target, in a sense, to be able to optimize, to bring productivity. From our sense, it is a productivity, but that's a job loss. That will happen.
Okay.
But one thing that people do not think, and I believe that's going to happen faster, is that anything that is very mathematical,
Sure.
anything that's equation-driven, even though somebody is doing a PhD now, maybe that job could also be given because the path for the machine is well-defined.
Sure.
Where machine will not work is probably you build a whole cake and the garnishing on the top, that may be an human intervention that is needed. So this is the three kinds of categories that will be kind of addressed in some sense. And then we talked about new jobs. I'll not repeat to that. But one job that I believe on the liberal arts, on the ethical science, more and more such machines come into play. They have to act. And today we take that last-minute judgment call,
Sure.
whether to hit an animal or a human or a bar.
Yeah.
Now the machine has to be embedded with that intelligence. And that has to be predefined in some sense. What does it do? That brings in a lot of ethical discussions and debate.
Sure.
And I would not be surprised, like psychologists and counselors, a lot of ethical science people that will be around.
So,
Thank you.
So you're not going to push your kids only to do engineering or
No.
medicine anymore,
No,
right?
no, no, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's good. That's good to know. So I'm going to ask the questions. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand so that we'll get some mic. So I know this is a topic that everybody is very interested in talking about. But before we get the mic to that person over there, one question for you while we talked about the productivity, Alok. So maybe, Prasad, you can actually take it up. Like, is the productivity gains are in line with our expectations? I mean, like, is it happening, and it's really happening? I mean, like, the financial industry is one of the very early adopters of automation, and very early adopters of any efficiency that they can bring to the picture, right? So, what's your perspective on it?
Oh, the simple answer is an emphatic yes.
Okay.
There's no doubt about that. The amount of productivity that's getting generated today is unimaginable. It's really pushing the limits of human laziness. For the lack of better option, if I'm settling in today into this job, and I'm doing the job I'm doing because it pays me
Sure.
to get this job done, I don't think we have a choice anymore.
Okay.
And that's the productivity we're talking. It's very positive productivity. We had a fantastic presentation.
Yeah, some of
this
the
morning.
examples that Alok was also
Great
mentioning about.
examples.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
Sure.
It's a great amount of productivity getting generated. But I feel that this productivity is not really going to be linear forever. It's really going to quickly come to a plateau, and it's probably already there. I
Okay.
don't know, maybe just very short period of time. So connecting back to your point of the jobs are going to be displaced. There's no question. Jobs have always been displaced in the last 2,000 years.
Absolutely.
So there's nothing new happening now. Here is a new tool.
We are talking about the speed of displacement and also the vision of what is going to emerge, right? I think this is one of those times where the speed is rapid, but we have no clue on what is going to emerge, right? That's really what we're talking
Absolutely. I think not just the AI, I think we're talking about the whole range of technologies today. Another, we were talking about the days of the linear expectations are over, even expectations, right?
Yeah.
Even the productivity expectations have not been linear anymore. I think we're really talking about deploying some of the bots today. I think some of the business cases that we are presenting to our business are absolutely exponential investments with exponential returns.
Absolutely.
Slightly less than exponential
So
investments.
you think that it is coming to the expectations on what we expected of the...
It is definitely coming. However, I'm only concerned about the inflated expectations.
Okay.
Inflated expectations.
Inflated expectations using the same tool. That is my problem.
Got it.
Because if you just have 30 seconds for me, I think I completely agree with Dr. Day here. The issue of what we accomplished today is really a lot of good investment has gone into building association-based insight-generating tools.
Sure.
The expert systems and all those things we already experienced. However, I think this plateau is going to be quickly hit us because a friend from Automation and I were also talking about humans are not the data processing machines. And today, who is processing so much of data to give an answer?
Sure.
I just read this nice anecdotal reference from Professor Raj Reddy in his Turing Award reception that he talked about. If somebody asked you if Narendra Modi is standing or sitting now, our great bots and AI, ML can actually process through all terabytes of information that is available very carefully in an optimal fashion and come up with an answer, I don't know.
Sure.
But a human faced with the same question would not process a bit. So I don't know. We also go back, they probably go and say, I don't care.
Yeah.
So I think the question today for hitting the plateau is really about not about worrying about getting optimal into what we know, but it's about the algorithms that we are talking, which knows what they do not know. That's where the human intelligence matching is coming from. So I would call that as an inflated expectation that just with the data extension of this linear curve would generate an algorithm to be an equivalent to a human. That's my take.
Santanu, what's your view on it? I mean, like, you have seen it enough, and you have worked for the company that thinks that it can solve any problem, so...
All right. So one of the interesting aspects, and I'll sidetrack a little bit. So think about the two things that are sort of interrelated. Efficiency, and sort of bringing you to an equilibrium point, along with the efficiency of what's happening with what I'd call the smart manufacturing. The cost of things are going down rapidly. Today, electricity in the next 10 to 15 years will become essentially zero. Manufacturing with additive manufacturing, 3D printing, cost of production will essentially again go towards zero. So when the cost of a lot of things goes towards zero, what ends up happening, everyone is sort of better off, right? So one of the things that we worry about, and this is something that you hear a lot about when it comes to job loss, is the society going to be equal or unequal, right?
Yeah.
See, the definition of equality or inequality 100 years back, 150 years back, the United States was a far more equal society. Everyone was equally poor, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather live in a society today in the United States and be poor, and then sort of long to go back to a society that was 150-year-old back, and was much more unequal, much more equal, right? So with the efficiency gain, one of the things that will happen rapidly is that the cost of things will come down. People would be able to afford things much more.
Sure.
And that will actually bring us the opportunity that I think will come with AI, which is the opportunity to restructure the society, right? Could we, for example, say that now that everyone sort of can make their living, right, or earn enough to afford everything,
yeah.
right? What do you do now, right? Because the available space of the currently defined jobs is going to shrink. It's not going to be available for everyone. So one of my favorite series is Star Trek. Do you build a Star Trek society where the job becomes this exploration of science, music, poetry, and I think one of us talked about psychology, right?
Yep.
The things that history, archaeology, stuff that humans are good at.
Which they enjoy as well.
Which they enjoy doing. So for example, if the UC Berkeley did not have a really poor postdoc fellowship for physics PhDs. I'll probably be a physics, professor someday, right? A poorly paid physics professor somewhere. I would still love doing it. You don't do it because it's sort of society doesn't pay for it.
Yeah.
But at the cost, as the cost of things go down rapidly,
Yeah.
your relative earning power for whatever you make becomes so high
Yeah.
that you can actually think about building a society from a ground up that's sort of far, far more evolved, far, far more equal in some sense. And people there do things that they enjoy. And sort of you are having a much more better human life than you have today.
Your hobbies become employment. So that's
right.
the point that
That's
he's
exactly.
trying to.
There was a question right there. Yes, go ahead. Whoever has the mic.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to know the panel's view on how would AIs handle bias, especially when we want to talk about things that would be automated. So, of course, we had a discussion that our hobbies would become our professions, and our professions would ideally be handled by the bots. How do those bots handle the bias, the inherent bias?
I mean, it's not in the, but
In
if
the-
anybody wants to take that
I'll
question.
take it a little broader way.
Sure.
I think we talked about productivity and we talked about the inequality going away. Some of these that we are attributing because we are inefficient here in the operations, we are probably having a lot of digital transformations. So because of that, the productivity coming into picture. And I take that question, AI's role, we should not attribute all the benefits that society is getting is due to AI. There are other things of supply chain management and things like that. What AI is bringing, let me take a couple of points, and that touches the bias removal also. One is the accuracy. I mean, the bias introduction or removal is in our hand. How you want to do. If you want to remove the data, you can make it much more equilibrium from one gender's data to other gender or one species to another species. That introduction is now in our hand to train it. Now, if you do it ill training, that becomes a problem. We just did launch a particular product in the Samsung phone in blood pressure measurement,
Sure.
the PPG. Now it's easy to do it because you see a lot of data that's inside. And when you took that, we did 40 plus parameters that we looked into it, and the thresholds are very dynamic depending on days and time, and you could produce that. Now, in that algorithm, we did remove, for example, the bias that comes, then a certain segment of people would be very low blood pressure, certain segments of people would be having a very high blood pressure. What is the proportion that is there today? If you train your system accordingly, then it represents the society. If you distort it, then that becomes a problem.
But that is based on the premise that you have enough data for the system to make that bias, right? Make that decision. But I think the question was like, if you don't have the data, and if you want to kind of make that decision, the things that you're talking about, am I going to hit five people who are illegally crossing the road, or am I going to hit one person who's like really following the rules? That kind of a decision.
There is no magic today, but there are a lot of techniques that there are unsupervised learnings. I'm not going into those details, but there are techniques that are coming up which is very less data. How can you create synthetic data? How can you do simulations and prepare data to be able to inject that when you do not have?
Awesome.
And the bias introduction of what I wanted to emphasize is it is in humans' hand because as we are building the system, how would you like to build it?
Sure.
It is quite a lot on us.
Okay. On the topic, right, while I know there is one more question coming up, but on the topic of say, do you think that there is a role for the government to play in this? I mean, like, at what level should the government say that, okay, enough is enough, and these are the boundaries of what AI system should do? Or these are the things that you absolutely are not going to do? Do you think that that is going to happen? I mean, like, do you think that there is some discussions around it?
Sure. I see two ways. Already our Niti Aayog has been earmarking like 7,500 crores plus on the AI.
Okay.
But their AI is, in this country, it is not so important that you just build some hypothetical algorithms, but where do you apply? And the developed nations to the developing nations, there are differences. So if you make a continuum of development degree, and if you see what you must have versus what is good to have, and you make that space, you will see for US and other countries, probably automated car is a good thing because people travel, it's a big country, roads are great, why not automated car? Whereas for us, how do I do a seed selections, the quality of seeds through vision, through AI plus visions, and can say to farmers that these are broken grains, but that's 10%, and you have 90% good grains, you demand from your broker or the middleman, this is the price.
Got it.
So there is a lot of benefit for us in deploying in certain segments of agriculture, in healthcare.
Sure.
And so one hand, government is going to push a lot of AI, and that's great for the young people. They are not fearful. I think some of the older people are more fearful, but I've seen when I talk to the young people, they are quite
So they know how to
active.
coexist with the machines
They know how
much
to
more.
coexist. They know how to build things. Young people who talk to them, the fear is not that much there.
That's good to know.
So that's one part of the story. But as a society, governance, there are all people. So for government to do, as I talked about the ethical dimensions of it, it has to come. The governance in some of the other fields came much later.
Yeah.
Here, since it's a cognitive system, the governance needs to come much earlier in different ways. And we better do little less than little more. In this case, being cautious to deploy in the society would be a better choice.
Okay, sorry, you had a comment,
Yeah,
Rajesh.
couple of things that I want to submit, Vamsee, is that the government does need to intervene. And if they see that there is a certain economic disparity that it's going to create, the government needs to do a certain level of intervention. And policy formulation, it could be in terms of educational reforms, getting certain curriculums reoriented so that you have a mix of statistics, maths, as well as data engineering getting in as well.
Sure.
And more importantly, if there's an economic inequality that it creates, there are certain governments that are thinking on policy formulations around universal basic income, UBI. There are certain governments that are working around creating certain financial incentives as well.
Sure.
For institutions to actually reskill and move the workforce which are in traditional job, work along with digital workers and start getting the super emerging jobs as I classified earlier. And at the same time, even around Niti Aayog, we mentioned about 7,500 crores. There is far more investment that's getting in terms of research around AI, setting up what is called as CORE, which is about Center of Excellence and Center of Research Excellence, etc., and promoting far more AI applications to be delivered and then delivered and deployed to a marketplace. So the government intervention is very key.
So we'll pause that thoughts there. Want to take one more question with the gentleman over there? Yeah.
My question to panel is about what will be the role of India in this whole journey. Like on one extreme, the India can again become a BPO of AI, where our engineers are just training the models which are developed in China and US and so on.
Sure.
Another extreme could be we can build our own future by building those models by ourselves. So question number one, do you think like India has the muscle power and the technical depth, which is basically all fundamentals in mathematics and so on? And are we producing enough engineers, or we will be just using the models which are being developed in the US universities or China?
Okay, great. Santanu, you want to take the question?
I'll take that. So actually, excellent question. Although I sort of started with the asteroid analogy, I think from India's perspective, the story is actually going to be net positive for a couple of reasons. So when you build an AI system, people who have built AI system, the first thing you need, two things are needed. One is needed to get the data in digital form, that's digitization effort. And the second is get the data in a digital form that's also correct. And that's sort of the data quality and data management aspect. From those two aspects, I think this is India's 1991 moment when the IT offshoring started. There are going to be a massive amount of data that's going to come from not only India, but from abroad. And people will sit down and have to go through the digitization and as well as through the what I call as the data quality, data cleansing, data management aspect of it to build the foundation of data science. So I'll give you an example. At my current employer, Airtel, we actually spent 3-4 years building that foundation before you could even get into the data journey, building the model journey. And that was the first question. The second question, does India have the muscle power? See, I have a POV here that's called the India class problems are very different than the rest of the world's problems, right? Very simple example. In the US, an address, the house in Fremont, California, there's only one way you can write, 40703 Canyon Heights Drive, Fremont, California. I only had one address in the US. In India, in 6 different government documents, I have 6 different types of address. So just disambiguating that, figuring things out and putting it in a format and standardizing it itself is going to be a challenge. If you talk to a data scientist in the US, they would have no idea how to solve that problem, right? So that India class problems and building a data science foundation of it and building an algorithm models out of it are not going to be addressed by the Chinese and the Americans. Largely, the problems are very, 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 very different. You had a follow-up. Please go ahead.
No, on that, I want to get a different perspective from you, Sanjeev, because you head the GCC for a large technology corporation, right? When you're thinking about what should I do in India, I'm just asking you that question, but I don't know whether.
What should I do in India from what perspective?
Is India the right place for me to do all these AI-related activities?
Okay.
Right? Is that even a question anymore? Or is it something still debatable?
It is a legitimate question because as much as we have this, graduating classes, 1 million, I think Pari was referring to, or somebody was referring to, 1 million students graduating every year and so
Daniel.
on. The actual applicability of those engineers to data science domain and AI and ML at the level of the quality of the engineers that we need. I don't believe we are at that level yet in India, right? And this is all due respect to the folks in the room, especially those from Ericsson. You guys are the best, but it's not there yet. And the level that we need to reach in order to be able to make contributions at that level, I don't think skill-wise we're there yet.
Okay.
And a large part of it has to do with the curriculum.
Okay.
Because there's probably a lot more tool-centric focus rather than looking at the broad spectrum of the problem that you're trying to solve and bringing your data science skill chops or AI and ML skill, the chops, the technical chops that you would call, to solving problems. But that said, this problem is not necessarily unique to just India. I mean, barring Silicon Valley, pretty much every geography that you go to, we're dealing with the same kind of problem because the demand is in large volumes, but the supply is not quite there yet.
Sure.
But it's a matter of time.
Okay.
It is going to require systematic investment on the part of
the entire ecosystem.
The company, yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
And
Just addressing,
absolutely. Sorry to cut you. Absolutely. It's just a matter of time. Start with the digitization. It gives you the time to go build the foundation. Start working on the data management while starting to reskill. So we do have the time to go build it. This problem is not going to solve in the next 2 years.
Absolutely.
Right?
But I know the time's up for us, but I want to end with one major question that everybody's asking, right? I mean, if you look at any studies which talks about the job losses, right? I mean, the reality is in India itself, I think Santanu you were talking about earlier, which says that in the last 5 years the economy grew 40% with actually job losses. Right? It was a net job loss in the last 5 years, yet the economy grew 40%, right? And if you look at the kind of jobs that traditionally we have in India compared to any other developed world, right? Maybe the AI is a great solution for Japan or Sweden where they're dealing with a completely different set of problems. But in India, like our survey itself kind of says that about 70% of the jobs in India can be disrupted, if not eliminated, right? It's huge numbers. And everyone here is going to be impacted one way or the other, right? What's the solution?
Oh, it is scary, especially if you look at the kind of jobs that are getting, in my opinion, again, India is a little bit better off than compared to countries where most of the jobs that have been outsourced are around manufacturing.
Okay.
Things that are more easily automatable. I don't think that is, again, I don't have the percentages, but I don't think that's the case here. There may be more service-centric jobs here, which again, I believe are going to survive.
Sure.
But at the same time, there's also an opportunity. I mean, if you look at India, there's chaos everywhere, right? And AI can be used in very intelligent ways to bring order to that chaos, starting with traffic or cleanliness or what have you. So there's also potential, for leveraging the workforce that we have, channeling in the right direction. Again, going back to the previous comment, training them to the right extent so that they can solve some of the problems which are India-centric. Okay. But yeah, otherwise it is scary. The job losses, and that's where most of us. At some point or the other, we'll need to start looking at how we reskill ourselves for the future.
Absolutely.
Just taking this discussion a little further and going back to the point that the gentleman actually raised. I personally believe that India can be an automation and AI hub, just like China has been a manufacturing hub.
Okay.
And that is for multiple reasons as well. A good 50 to 65% of our processes outsourced towards India. So if there's an element of re-engineering that you would need to do, an element of digital that you want to drive, etc., we are probably best positioned to do it. One, the demographic dividend, the second point, plays to our big advantage. And three, a slew of startups on AI has tasted certain success and extremely good investors. And I think if you look at, it's just not about narrowed use case, far more broader use cases that is becoming far more artificial general intelligence, if I could call. So these three, four reasons, I would say, has the potential for us to become an automation AI hub, something like China wants for manufacturing hub.
Absolutely. Alok, your question.
So I want to say that, we talked about AI winter. I think I heard that AI spring, this is summer. Bangalore weather has changed, but AI is kind of going to be very evergreen. Original Bangalore weather in AI world will come.
Excellent.
The reason is very simple. We have the processing power, whether it is on device, whether it is cloud, that's one. Number two, the ability to sense, to see. The GPS plus AI, you know your route, where is it congested, this. It is not just AI. The ability to see, the sense plus this is very powerful.
Sure.
And the third is all these data that we have, we can combine, process, privacy will come, but still we will process with the consent. So with this situation, it's not going to go away.
Okay.
Job losses, in long term, who knows, the workplace and everything will shift. Today, if we look into the vacancy list of AI-related data cloud jobs, I think it's not getting filled. So I don't understand the fear versus this. And as I said, young people are not afraid. They are looking for these. They are reskilling to get into that.
Okay.
That's the part. And the last part, combining the question, it's not about just looking into, is it a data, is it a model? Yeah, maybe US is better in some and India is not.
Sure.
But AI is all pervasive. You can take a battery, and the way you used to do batteries power predictions just by looking into linear, that it works now in 2 hours, so 8 hours it will drop. It is not like that. It knows that in the evening you listen to music. It knows that the battery is 5-year-old.
Yeah.
It can predict how much now it will be doing. Simple SVM techniques or AI techniques can make that simple prediction. So it is all pervasive. We should rather focus on solving our country's problems. It's plethora of problems. Let's focus on them.
So it's a good thing overall
Yes.
for India, is what saying. Yes.
So one
Santanu.
quick data point. 12 years back, when Sachin and Vinny started Flipkart, a lot of us sort of started looking at the Western model of startups and sort of replicated. And that's not a bad thing. It worked out. It's all good. Right now, the two statistics I have heard, there are 5,000 startups in India. And there, every year, about 1,000 registered are being created. And I know, at least in the audience, there are a couple of who are not registered yet, working for 2 years and building startups. My daughter works with one. So with that kind of energy, the youth, the number of people who are starting to solve the India-specific problems. It's no longer people trying to solve West problem.
Sure.
And if you, once the mind has sort of shifted towards that,
Yeah.
there's so many problems. So for example, just glaucoma detection in your eyes using a cell phone. FDA will never approve it in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Here, so many people don't have access to the healthcare. That itself is a leapfrog. So the way I look at it is that India has an opportunity, and this time I'm just going to tom-tom my employer. The way India leapfrogged from not having any telephones to everyone having a mobile phone, India will sort of leapfrog from people having limited amount of compute to sort of everyone getting an AI-assisted solution for whatever India class problem you have.
Perfect. We'll close off with you, Prasad.
Oh, that's a great honor, Vamsee. My takeaway, Vamsee, we are humans. And moreover, let's not forget we are Indians.
Sure.
So the reason I say that humans, we are machines of adaptability like nobody else. So we will adapt to anything that is happening, and we will not be able to foresee it because we actually are an exponential machines that way. So we will do this. And taking back one point VLK mentioned in the presentation in terms of how to get the corner office, this is almost the same.
Yeah.
How do I get to the corner office before my robo can go there? As long as our desire to succeed by adapting, like the way we did in all these lakhs of years, overpowers the fear of failure, we would be there. And
that's a great
Indians
note.
have proven it in an umpteen number of times, and this is no different.
Perfect. I think that's a great optimistic note to end the panel. I know this is a panel, I can vote for the discussions that we had. We could have gone for the whole day with just this one topic. There is so much that we can learn from all these great individuals here. I think I kind of echo the optimism, kind of a concerned optimism, right? We don't know what it is, but we are pretty optimistic that we will adapt to whatever it is, right? Yes, it is not something that we have ever seen, but that doesn't mean that we have to be scared all the time. Yes, we have to be concerned. We have always reskilled ourselves. We have always faced the problems very unique. We have great opportunity ahead of us than what we have seen in the past. So with that, I think we'll wrap up the panel again. For each one of you, thank you so much for sharing the thoughts. I know it's gotten very late,
Pleasure.
but thank you all for staying and pitching in as well. Thank you.
Pleasure in you. Thank you.